countdowns are great. They give you a countdown on this app, and I just love it. But there's a certain kind of tension I feel that happens with a count. Did you feel the tension too?
Yes, every time. I also use Riverside to host mine, and now I have it just automatically start because there's something about the countdown that like brings up this level of anxiousness.
I didn't know that you could do that, that you could eliminate the countdown. Okay.
So it would basically, you either get the countdown or as soon as we enter the studio together, it just automatically starts recording. So it's whether you want to do that extra little bit of cutting in the beginning of the
Okay.
actual recording.
See, we're learning something new every day here about the,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and countdown anxiety aside, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm
Of
honored.
of course, Davina, how do you pronounce your last name?
Hehn.
Hain, A-E sound, Hain.
Mhm.
Can I ask you maybe the history of that name or
Yeah. So I married into it. I was pronouncing it hen for the first year that we dated because I had no idea. And then he corrected someone. I was like, ooh, noted. So he is Irish, Scottish, Norwegian, that area. And it was actually his grandmother's maiden name. Nope, that's not true. His first name is his grandmother's maiden name. That it's a town in Ireland, I believe,
okay,
where it comes
Hain.
from.
Hain.
Hmm.
Brilliant. I love that he waited a year to correct you.
I don't think he ever heard me say it.
Oh, okay.
And then we were at a restaurant and I gave the name for our reservation and he was like, Hane. Oh,
Pain, actually.
did.
Um, I love that. Thank you for sharing. One of my favorite questions is, I think it's from the great Carl Rogers. Um, what do you think we should know about you at the beginning of the show? What is it you think we should know about you?
Man. I think I love that question too, because even when I'm hosting people, it's like, introduce yourself. Okay. And then it's more of this stuff that I don't know that anyone really cares about. Um, so to know about me is I do the work alongside my clients, and I don't think that we're ever done. And so what you'll see from me is a lot of humility, a lot of honesty and raw transparency, vulnerability. And I think that it's an important thing to lead with at all times, but especially when we're mentoring and when we're guiding people through any sort of personal development work.
Follow-up question. Who are your clients is the first question.
Yeah. So I work with emotionally overwhelmed individuals, primarily parents in the first 10 years or preparing for parenting. And it rocked me really hard. And so that's where I've kind of migrated to. And so I help us all regulate our nervous systems, break generational cycles, and communicate with them.
I love that it wasn't the first 10 months, it was the first decade.
It's a lot.
Because let's be
It's,
honest,
yeah.
that's probably a very, very difficult decade.
Yeah. And that's where we see the most amount of divorces are in the first 5 years. Our nervous system is kind of built by the time we're 5 to 7 years old, our attachment style as well. And so for most of us, including myself, who had to learn this work in my late 20s and 30s, I'm trying to give us parents a head start for our kids. So we raise more emotionally intelligent, less wounded children.
So it sounds like you have your own children.
I do.
How
Yeah.
old are they, if I may ask?
Yeah, of course. I have two boys. They're 5 and 8.
Okay.
And yeah, we didn't quite prep. It was more so like, let's just see. And then I got pregnant the very next cycle, and we didn't really know what we were getting into. And it really rocked us in a lot of ways about our personal identity, how we navigated our conflict in our relationship, how we navigate being tired and scared and not knowing what we're doing. And it created so much conflict in us because it really just shined a light to all these blind spots that we just didn't quite see.
Can you maybe share what the most glaring realization was for you all? I know it's probably might be
Yeah.
different for, couples. For you and your husband or your partner?
Yes.
Okay,
Hudson.
for your husband, what do you think was the biggest one where you're like, "Oh God, I didn't really think that. Gosh."
I think it's kind of all of it, but more so than anything, we talked about having a baby, right? And maybe that it was naive. I didn't think about the longevity of it. I didn't consider having a baby and a fifth grader and a high schooler and this grown adult. I wasn't able to think really that far ahead. And we didn't really think about it much. It wasn't enough. It was, we got married, okay, and this is kind of what we're supposed to do next. We didn't question it. And so what we ended up seeing was our poor coping skills, most definitely. My anxious attachment style, his more avoidant, disorganized, and really just our lack of ability to manage the overwhelm and regulate ourselves and not allow our kids' tantrums to create chaos and just full breakdown tantrums of our own. I wasn't
Mm.
prepared for the emotional requirement, the constant regulating of their nervous system, of their emotions, when I can barely do that for myself, and I just didn't realize it at the time.
I certainly relate to, quote, not being able to do that for myself. My therapist is my longest relationship in New York beyond my partner of 17 years. So that tells you something.
Uh-huh.
But going back to a question that came up for me as you were talking about thinking about having a baby, did you all consider why?
Why we were having one? No.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's
No,
a,
we sure didn't.
in my observation, that's a very common thing. It's like, but why? Well, I'm a baby. Well, why? Well, why? And folks dive into this and don't really have a really solid, clear reason why. Is that so for you all? Was that, do you feel like it's something most folks overlook? Do you think it's something folks should be more, parents should be more intentional about? Kind of thing? Because it's like, because I think sometimes biologically, societally, culturally, it's like, okay, we're married, now is the time, and I've always wanted to have kids. Never really actually having a good answer, or I should say, a clear answer as to why you want to have kids. So it sounds like you all were in a position that maybe a lot of parents might be in. Is like, if someone asks you, well, why are you having a baby? You might not have an answer.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. And I have this anecdotal theory that some of us are born to be parents and some of us are born to be partners. And it doesn't mean that we can't be both. It just means that we view the world through one lens or the other. And so my whole thing was, yeah, eventually I'll have kids as I grew up, not because I actually desired them or felt like it would fulfill me, but because that's kind of just what's up on the docket, especially being a woman, that is kind of what it is. When I went into grad school, it's like, well, when are you going to have your baby? I was like, I don't know, at some point later, I don't know. And so it wasn't quite that. He and I definitely didn't discuss it. And it was more so just, let's just see what happens. And what I see with a lot of my clients is that it's trying so hard to have a baby and then maybe getting obstacles and not being able to conceive. So then it becomes, well, do I really want this? Or is it because something biologically or within the universe is telling me that I can't have it and that makes me want it even more? So a lot of the parents that I work with even struggled with challenges in conceiving. And then once baby comes, it's like, oh shit. Like I had no idea what I was getting into. And I didn't prepare for this. I prepared for the pregnancy. And even throughout the entire pregnancy, there's not really talk about why we're doing it. It's all about baby and here's what to expect for baby, but not for us and how we're going to navigate this. If I could wish anything for parents considering or for people considering parenthood, it would be to one, yes, exactly to your point, determine what it is that makes you want a child and how that will fulfill you and how much of that is about you versus about this child. Are they extensions of you or are they these complete individual entities? Are you trying to relive certain parts of your life through them or are you wanting to guide them into their own existence? And beyond that, it's how are we going to navigate any of this? How is our marriage or our relationship going to withstand? What do we do if our relationship seems like it's rocky? How are we going to protect it and salvage what this is? So my default mode is as a partner. I think about my marriage, my relationship more than I do about my parenting. My kids, of course, are still top priority. And when I'm considering my marriage, it almost feels like my kids get in the way of my relationship. And for those who are born to be parents, it's like their partner gets in the way of their parenting. And it really kind of changes the whole dynamic of how we view these things. And so I don't think that there's a wrong answer. I wasn't born to be a parent, and I really do love being a parent. I like I like the job, I hate the work kind of deal. And I adore my children. I genuinely believe that the world's a better place with them in it. And I've worked very hard to be a good mom. And a lot of these things just don't come naturally to me.
I have quite a few thoughts, I have questions really for you.
Yeah.
One of the things that occurred to me as you were speaking, I was thinking, it sounds like your clients would benefit from getting to start the relationship with you before they get pregnant.
Yes, that's ideal. We try to do some even before we get married too. So a lot of my clients started with me when they were dating or maybe newly engaged, and then we navigate through the marriage, and then we navigate into this. And within each one of those big milestones, there's talk of separation almost every time. And it's really just because it overwhelms our ability to cope with it, and then we don't know what to do. We feel very lonely in this relationship. And so if it's up to me, of course, we would start when we're considering maybe getting, either getting married, but also it's a big gap in between there, and I'm not into the chronic therapeutic model, but it's more so about when we're considering this massive change in our lives, that we're not just adding baby in and living our lives as normal. It upheaves everything. And so if we could, it's yes, it's almost like a premarital counseling. It's a pre-baby kind of expectation management, and how are we going to navigate this? How are we going to communicate well and work through our conflict in healthy, adaptive ways, as opposed to raising children in the way that maybe I was, but I didn't intend to raise them the same.
Hmm. Hmm. One of the reasons why we don't have children is because I've always lived under the belief that as soon as that child is born, your life is over. It's dead. So a birth happens and a death happens. So you have a birth of a human life that is your child and a death of your old life, and it will never ever come back. And I
Mhm.
don't, and in my observation, most folks are not ready for that death. And no one tells them that this is what's going to happen. And unless you're someone who is incredibly well resourced, where you can, and I have friends that are incredibly well resourced that have about three people helping them at all times, that they're
Mm.
able to basically carry on with life as if the child never came. But that takes an army, and that takes you separating and, doing, which is just not accessible to the majority of folks. So I think one of the things that's standing out for me as you're speaking is that, like, yeah, you thought you did, you had an idea of what it was, and then it's also easy to forget. I think for anything meaningful that you have to choose to do it every day, and and to even like, I feel like a lot of times more consideration goes into what job someone's going to take
Yes.
than what than
Yes.
what whether or not I should have. So let me ask you, what are some things, if someone's out there and they hear this and they're like, yeah, I'm thinking of having a child. What are some things that you might encourage them to ask themselves that could be helpful to bring some clarity to the idea for them, to make sure this is something that is going to be aligned for them? It's going to bring them mostly joy and not a bunch of like, oh man, oof, did I, you know, I'm not really, this is not something I actually really want.
Yeah, I mean, regret is a very common experience for parents just from the beginning, but what I would want them to really work through is, what are your expectations? Right? A lot of people find that they have children in order to fulfill them, to complete them, to make them feel whole. And for many of us, myself included, that isn't what happened. And so I would want them to really ask themselves, what is it that they think having a baby will fulfill for them? What makes them feel like they are qualified to do that, to raise this child and mentor and guide them through their life. I was not qualified at all. And I'm I'm like now feeling more qualified, but I'm still, I mean, my kids are 5 and 8. My eldest attachment style is pretty much ingrained. His nervous system is pretty much wired. And so there's a lot of that I don't mean qualification as if we are lesser than or unworthy. It's more so, how are we going to be this person in these kids' lives and try to create less harm than we experienced? And these are the types of things that I really want people to understand. I think a lot of us are kind of just bamboozled into it. We're told that it'll complete us, that it's going to be this beautiful, joyous thing. And don't get me wrong, there are so many experiences where I just feel like my chest could burst. I'm just so in love with my kids and I'm so grateful. And it is just such a beautiful thing to experience. And it's horrific. And a lot of the time it sucks. And I don't know how many of us know that. And so that's what I would want people to really emphasize, really place a lot of effort and energy into considering what are my expectations of this. And whatever they are, I would recommend dropping them a little bit. Not to lower them because it's terrible, but more so just to have a more realistic view of what it is. Stay with a friend who has a child for an extended period of time. And it really is just this all day, every day thing. And to your point about this identity grieving, right? This identity loss once we have children, it's so very true that the minute, at least moms, the minute we get pregnant, we're already home with the baby and baby is already the top thing in our mind. And that never stops. And so it's really about navigating that and how am I going to be able to do that effectively and without panic or disengagement.
When you say top of mind, Davina, do you think it's biological, societal, both layers? What do you think is a contributing factor?
Very good question. I'd imagine some of it is biological, right? Like we get all these neurochemicals that release that help us feel more protective and really mama bear it. And there's this recognition that I am responsible for this fragile little being's existence. And kind of everything immediately becomes that. I can't go run to the restroom without wondering where my kids are. When I was a new parent, I couldn't walk down the stairs without freaking out and being worried about dropping him or doing something to harm him. Some of that is maybe knowing that the legal system would have something to say about it. The other part is this innate need to protect. And also this tertiary part is knowing that I made this decision and this is my responsibility. And so for better or worse, for want or need, it has to be top of mind. I don't really get a choice. And once they're older and they're walking and toddling and talking and the whole deal, you don't really get a choice. They're just there all the time. And they're a constant reminder
Right.
of their needs. Yeah.
You got me thinking of the word unnatural. My old boss, Naomi Sullivan, who's just a genius, she would say when anybody, we were in the corporate kind of strategy thinking, strategic thinking consulting business. And, these CIOs would fly out and she's like, well, she's made an unnatural act to get here. So we have to make a big deal when she gets it. So unnatural act. And one of the things, and I'm by no means a sociologist, so everybody listening, take this with a grain of salt. One of the things I do think about, child rearing nowadays is we have departed so far from what nature intended. And I do believe in Mother Nature. And one of my favorite expressions is Mother Nature will always remain undefeated. No matter what we do, the hurricane comes, it don't matter. She's gonna take it. She'll take whatever she wants. And all we can do is obey her. So, I have visions of, children being born into a tribe and being reared by a group of women, or a group of men and women. And there's always help around. And when a child comes in, that woman is not alone in isolation in her house, or fathered alone in isolation. You are amongst people always. And the weight of that becomes far less than someone who is now living like I'm in New York. It's like most of our friends have kids. Like upstairs, they just had a baby. It's like, there they are in a small apartment, mom and dad. Like they have a nanny, but like there's really no escape. Like there's not a lot of people around them. They're
Yeah.
isolated. So and one of the other things I think of is you talk about women's the evolution in the workforce. And one of the things I have to note is that, yes, women have made strides, but they have released no responsibilities. So it's like, yeah, sure, you're more in the workforce, but you're also the main one who kind of has to take care of the child. It's not like you trade it. Like, hey, I went working and then some third party came in and relieved me of my mothering responsibilities. So I feel like there's also this double pressure now where it's like, you have to mother, and then you also have to corporate or, career. And it's like, wow, that's a lot. Like one of those things is hard enough. So I guess, I mean, that's a roundabout way of saying is like, how do you feel about nature and how it might how do we're not in the, tribal world anymore. We have to live in actuality. Like, so how do you feel about this departure from nature? Do you agree with it, disagree? Like, how do you think
Yeah.
folks can find a way to ease the burden, so to speak, that would have happened naturally within a large group of people rearing a child?
Yeah, I mean, it really is just such a good point that we are one of the only nations in the world that are so deeply individualistic, not within a collectivist culture, right? And so, to your point, we actually relocated recently and we moved in with my sister, her husband, and their 3 kids. So we now have 4 adults, 5 kids, ages 3 to 8, all in one household. And while it's chaos, a lot of the time, it really is a beautiful chaos.
Mhm.
There's more sharing of responsibilities. We're not, it's not one of us doing each one of the meals and the laundry and all of this. It really does allow for us to have more of this tribal collectivist experience. And it's really been a very beautiful thing. What I think we would all benefit from is allowing our egos to die a little bit when it comes to this work. There's so much about this that we keep hush hush. When I talk about, not loving parenting, right? I love my children and I love being their parent. I don't enjoy parenting, the job, the work of it. And when I speak about those things, I get a lot of judgment and a lot of ridicule and a lot of people who don't think I should be saying it, a lot of people that disagree. And I wonder how much of that is actually because they disagree and how much of it is just because I'm speaking life to something that's supposed to stay hidden. And what I wish a lot of us would do is work with our in-laws if it's possible, right? Like I know that it creates a lot of tension. And where a lot of the tension stems from is from each of us thinking that we're doing it the right way. And there's a lot of defensiveness and protectiveness over the way that we choose to parent. And a lot of that is just programmed in us. It's not really something that we thought about. It's, well, I was raised this way, so this is the way that I will raise my kids. And the lack of cohesion there, I think, is what also contributes to this deep level of isolation that we have already within an individualistic culture. And on top of that, everyone saying, well, everyone has their shit, so keep it behind closed doors.
Mm.
And I very much disagree with it. I think it's so important to have this community, this tribe. And when, especially within the relationship, before we become parents, we don't know what it's truly like. Even if we stay with friends for weeks on end, we really don't know what that's truly like. And so we tend to have partners and in-laws who make false promises unintentionally. And then baby comes and shit gets real and dad isn't as supportive or helpful as he intended to be because it ends up overwhelming him and he doesn't know how to. And then we fall within traditional gender roles, right? So then he says, well, actually, this isn't my job anyway, so you should be doing this, right? And and then we end up just more and more lonely. The in-laws who promised that they would be there and support, they're either there and they're not there in the way that we need them to be, or they're there and they're always there, or they're just not there at all. And then we end up feeling failed and abandoned in a lot of these ways. So a collectivist, yes, with an and asterisk of like, how are we going to do this?
Right. I think of my friend Erin, who is she's a PhD in psychology and she teaches at NYU. Wonderful human, brilliant human. And she was honest to us one. They have a daughter, and she's like, "Look, I love my daughter, but," and it was really hard for her to get pregnant. Like
Mm.
she was one of these folks that you talk about like hormones, and it was a really, really, big deal, not an easy journey for her. She's like, "I love my daughter, but my advice, you really, 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 really got to want this because it's a huge pain in the ass." And she's like, "It's hard. It's really, really, really hard." And I think, and I appreciate you speaking truth to truth because, of late, I just feel like we need more and more. Like, can we just be honest? Can we just be on?
100%.
Can we just friggin' be on? And Chris Rock and his recent stand up, and I do agree with him. He had a bit where he's like, everybody's full of shit. Like everybody's just full of shit. Like companies, they're like, we don't want to make money. We just want to give back. We just
Uh-huh.
want to give back. We just, it's like, could we just be honest? You want to make money and you'll give a little bit away because it's a tax break. So what? It's
Uh-huh.
okay. It doesn't make you a bad person. Like, right. You're struggling with parenting. I remember I saw a woman in a meeting, a long time ago when I used to go to AA. She was, going to AA meetings and had her kid strapped to her because she had no help. She's like, I hate her. She's like, and she didn't mean it. Like, she didn't mean she
Yeah.
hates her daughter. She's like, I just want to like separate from her and lock myself in a closet and smoke a joint. She's like, I have no space anymore in my life. And I feel like that's another thing that I do notice with women, especially women that I know who have children, maybe around the ages of your children, is like, they just have no space. There's like, they have no time to themselves, like at all. And almost seems like this, like we were talking about before, this identity death. And they weren't
Mhm.
really ready. And they're in their early 30s or mid 30s. And they're like, oh shit, I want to feel fulfilled or self-actualized. And it feels like the self-actualization is really taking a hit, like big time. Do you notice that? Is that some?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Entirely. And that's where I wish people I think the honesty comes with a need to acknowledge multiple truths and even contradictory truths, right? So a lot of the time, whenever I say these things, people give me direct feedback that I must hate my kids and I must regret becoming a mother and all of this. And I'm like, okay, well, those are your fears that you're projecting because that's not at all how I experience this. I love my children, and what they represent is a lack of freedom, right? What they come with, the responsibility that they come with that is separate from them as individual entities, as these little wonderful, beautiful little beings who are just fiery and feral. Separate from them is the responsibilities that they require. And if we could separate that, I think we would see a lot more honesty coming through. But a lot of us believe in black and white, and that it's either I love my kids and no, 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 like no one gets to touch this. And no, 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 if I acknowledge any part that I don't like, then my kid's going to feel not loved, or people will assume that I don't love my kids, whatever that is. And no, I talk to my kids often about parenting is hard. That like, this isn't something that came easily. This isn't something that I really thought through. I didn't consider it fully. And I love you. And man, like you see everything that we're doing. You see all of this responsibility, right? And it's not to guilt or shame them or any of that. They look around and they're like, yeah, I get it. Right? They both know their birth story. They know all of these things because I don't want to raise anyone who is disillusioned about what this is like, and primarily men who are going to be disillusioned or downplay what happens to women's bodies when we're building humans from scratch and then birthing. It's sci-fi. And so there's a lot of this that comes through, and I just want there to be more acknowledgement that I can say two things, they can both be true even if they contradict. They both individually, separately exist. And I wonder if people just struggle with that ideology of how can I accept both things without disengaging from my kids somehow or admitting defeat in another way.
I mean, and as somebody that's been a photographer for a long time, I have like a bit of a metaphor for this, and that is there's really no such thing as a pure black and white photo. And here's the
Mm.
reason for that. There is no detail in pure black and there's no detail in pure white. So black and white photos are really just shades of gray. And if it was a pure black and white photo, you would see nothing. You would just see a
Mm.
black and a blob. And if you want to get technical about it, in Photoshop or Lightroom, there's something called a histogram. Are you familiar with this? A
I've heard
histogram
the
is like
word, but
it's a
yeah.
little graph that shows you, dark to light. And what you can see in the histogram is like the different shade, black is here, white is here on the right and left. And what happens is if you push too far into one way or the other, you erase all the detail. So it's called blown out. If it's white, there's just too highlighted. There's just no detail. So for that reason, I always remind myself there actually is no black and white, because even in the purest black and the purest white, you're talking about there's nothing there. So it really only exists in the middle. And this idea that people need to realize that two things can be true at the same time. Four things can be true at the same time. Just because you hate parenting or dislike it doesn't mean that carries over to how you feel about your child. I love my child and I also hate parenting and I also wasn't ready for this. And I also now am going to work towards being better at this. And also I'm going to make sure that I don't raise children that, wind up in the position that I wound up in, not considering what this might look like. And I do believe that the folks that are probably attacking you are having these thoughts. They're a hundo. It has nothing to do with you, of course, and everything to do with the fact that, yep, that's how they feel. But they just cannot. They don't have the self-love, compassion for themselves, or whatever that might be, to be able to go, yeah, like this is true. And I don't know. I really, just speaking to you for this very short while, it's like the work that you're doing, I feel is so important because you're having a real conversation about what it's really like. Like, do you really hold on a second? I know you say you want it, but just hold on a second. Like, what's it really? And I think also, aside from children, we can get very, um, we can blind ourselves to what the day to day is really like. And it's like, I want to be an actor. Like I still am an actor. I still go out auditions from time to time, but it's not my career anymore. It's something that I do just for pure enjoyment. If something happens, great. If not, no big deal. But I wasn't ready when I left graduate school, when I left graduate acting school, to do the day to day of what it was to be an actor, which is 99% not acting and going into auditions and getting rejected and then, constantly doing work where you will receive nothing in return. I was not ready, not even close, for the mental fortitude it takes to go on audition after audition and literally get nothing. That's the
Mm.
game. That's what it means to be. Even the movie stars, you're mostly unemployed. Like like you live unemployed for basically your whole life. They told us that, but I didn't hear it. You know what I'm saying? Oh, not me. Yeah, well, it's going to be different for me. I'll hit it big probably in a matter of weeks. No. So it's like, really letting people know that this is what actuality is. Are you sure? And it's okay not to be. But I'm also hearing that I think sometimes folks don't want to admit that they might be a better partner than a parent. And maybe children is really not a good idea. Like, even though you only get one shot at it, like, not one shot, but, one life, you have a certain span of time.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that could be something that comes up for folks where they just can't be honest with themselves and be like, you know what, honestly, I don't know, my kid.
Yeah, I don't know that we know how to really. Right,
Mm.
there is that kind of part that when we have so many options of what we want to do, we are going to struggle in it, and so we'll kind of just take the path of seeming least resistance that ends up just imploding everything. But there absolutely is that. And what I'm hearing about even your story about your experience in the acting world is that you just couldn't conceptualize that yet. It wasn't within a realm of reality that you could imagine living within. And that's kind of what parenting is. It's like, well, sleep now, do this before baby's here. And it's like, okay. Like I thought I was tired before kids. I had no idea what that was. Right. And I didn't have any idea, any ability to actually conceptualize what this level of tired was. Knew my previous amount. And then we had one. And then, okay. And then that was terrible. And then we had two, and I was like, oh, okay, there's no turning back. Like there really is just this now is my new normal. And so I think when it comes to people admitting these things, if we don't have that mental fortitude, if we don't have that grace and give ourselves room to exist and have things to if we didn't allow ourselves to feel things really deeply and then choose to put it down and move through, right? Like that self-compassion, that efficacy, then yeah, we're going to just deny it because I don't know how to sit in the reality of this isn't what I wanted and this isn't what I expected without going too far the other way and resenting the hell out of our kids
Right.
and reacting really poorly to them. So my whole thing is we're already reacting poorly to them. We already are ill-equipped. So why don't we lead with a little bit of honesty within it and then still be able to hold ourselves with some compassion about how hard this is. And I think everyone acting like it's so easy is what makes those of us like me who struggle within it feel worse about myself, because then I think, oh, it's just me. I
Right.
might just be a bad mother. I might just be a terrible actor. I might just not have what it takes. And I am given, I'm no biologist or doctor or anything, but I was clinically diagnosed with postpartum depression. It got dark. It got dark. And when I think back to those times, what I'm realizing is that my expectation didn't match my reality. And then there was a deep sense of grief about that. And my needing support, but not really knowing how to describe it. And my husband just trying, but also suffering and panicking within his own existence. There was a lot of that, that if we don't quite know what to expect, or we're told that it will be one thing, and then our living reality is so contradictory, it becomes this identity crisis of, okay, well, what did I just do? And I have the choice between being a present mom who is unhappy, who treats her children poorly, who's reactive, who yells, who, engages in these really ugly things, or being a completely absent mother who abandoned her children, right? Like it leaves us feeling like it's one or the other. And my whole work and my background is in anger management. Primarily, it's really just teaching all of us anger management, which is just emotional regulation, which is life management. And so without those skills, without those tools, we will kind of perpetuate this. I will live within a chronic depression because my expectation isn't matching my reality. And now that I have this reality, I don't know what to do with the grief, with the letdown, with the obvious glaring truth that I don't know what I'm doing, and I
Mm.
don't really like it either. So how do I move through?
I have so many thoughts. Anger management. I'm gonna grab anger
Yes.
management. So I've actually never met anybody uh, who specializes or has dealt in that realm. Could you talk a little bit about how you got there? What's that like? Why anger
Yeah.
management? Or what is it
I
about anger
absolutely
management?
I love this work so much. So my background is in psychology. I went into forensic psychology. And during my grad school years, I was primarily interested in sex offense. And then as I got older and I was doing the prison work and all of that, there was just that part that it's very underpaid, it's underappreciated, it's not really what you want. And it also is meeting these lifers where I can't do much besides put a Band-Aid on it, right? Like I'm not healing anything, I'm not preventing anything. And so I really wanted to lead with more impact. And the chronic therapeutic model, traditional therapeutic model, just felt like it was too reactive. It wasn't preventative enough. It wasn't based in skills as much as it is in managing symptoms.
Pardon my interruption. So do
Yeah.
you have a master's in psychology? Were
Forensic
you
and
a
counseling.
okay?
Sorry, what?
Say that again.
It was
Forensic.
forensic and counseling psychology.
Okay, great. So you were essentially a counselor,
Training
therapist.
to be a therapist. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yep. Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's
Great.
formal training in therapy. And then of course I'm in it and I'm like, oh, this doesn't seem like the best model. And I get where it came from and I respect it. My degree was a phenomenal thing that really transformed who I am and how I show up as a provider. I'm so grateful for it. And I didn't go the traditional path. And so during this time that I knew I didn't want to do therapy, I didn't want to do licensure and diagnose and do all of this, I was struggling within my relationship with my husband because he was explosive with his anger. We were patching holes in walls and changing doors and doing these types of things that I was never in fear for my safety by any means. It was just we couldn't have a conflict. We couldn't have an argument. We couldn't disagree without him blowing up or shutting down,
Hmm.
or me just kind of shutting down and then guilting and shaming him with my anxious attachment. And so it was just this really rocky thing. And he wasn't open to doing the work because he, of course, was raised by people who didn't know how to handle him and was sent to therapist after therapist. And no one really seemed to help. He was the problem. He was the anomaly, right?
Hmm.
And so he wasn't open. And I was in this professional identity crisis of, oh man, like I'm deep in debt and I don't want to do this. What do I do? And then I learned about anger management. And in my brain, I was like, okay, well, he's Hulk smashing through walls. So, like, anger management is just what we do, right? And so I chose to get certified in it in an attempt to, like, infiltrate from within, that
Sure.
while I'm doing this, I'll figure out a way to like fix him. And it wasn't until I went through the certification for it that I realized even what it was, because I had no idea. I don't think any of us really know what anger management is, myself included. And so then I'm there, I'm halfway through my very first day, and I kind of have this experience where like the walls kind of like close in on me. It's like one of those like
Mm.
movie shots. And it was, oh, I'm part of the problem. Like, it's not just him. I'm baiting this man unintentionally.
In what way?
It was with the attachment style first and foremost, and then even our communication styles. I was villainizing his anger instead of trying to understand the message that it was sending.
Mm.
Right? That it was overwhelming his ability to cope with what was being talked about in that moment, and it's sirens going off in his head. It's not a choice. It's not about him being unwilling to sit down and have a calm conversation with me. It's an incapability. And so I learned about attachment styles, about communication styles, boundaries, triggers, just all of these types of things that would seemingly be like the rubric for growing up as a human. And yet
Mhm.
none of us are really taught this. And so it allowed for me to see ways that, yes, of course, the way that he externally expressed his anger was problematic, no doubt. And the way that I internalized my anger and then pivoted it into emotional punishment of him and judging him and ridiculing him and kind of allowing for his problematic solution, which is the aggression, to take center stage. And so long as he did that, I could sit back and act like he was the only one acting, like he was the only problem. And so it was through that work that I really got to see ways that I, of course, unintentionally baited him. I didn't present conversations with him as openly as I thought I did. I had a preconceived notion of what answer he could give me. I almost like created a whole screenplay and was like, why
Mm.
you don't know your lines? Like, what's happening? Like, why aren't you showing up?
You're
And
not
so it
saying
was
what I
just
wrote. I didn't write any of this.
like, don't you know how to be in here? And it was
Stick to
poor
the script.
expectation. Exactly. Like, I'm telling you exactly what I need you to say. And it was a lot of this that I realized how ill-equipped we are and how essential anger management is for all of us. But again, it's one of those things that none of us really understand. And so because we don't understand, we villainize. And then it comes with this deep sense of shame and stigma and judgment. And it's really become kind of more of my life's work to teach these things in a way that's more approachable. So it's nervous system regulation. It's not anger management, even though they're the same thing. It's packaged differently. And with that comes my recognizing when I became a new parent and all of these things that I didn't need to be me. I needed to find me. I needed someone who did what I did in the way that I did it to be who I could go to. And I couldn't find anyone like that, which is why I pivoted away from more core ordered anger management, primarily men on the tail end of an ultimatum, which is primarily my caseload prior, and into parents who I think could obviously need this and benefit from it. And so how can I lead with my own experience and kind of bridge that gap?
Well, it's interesting when you're talking about anger management versus emotional regulation. One, you're talking about one emotion, and then and the latter you're talking about, well, all the emotions. And so I do note that. And then I do believe in David Hawkins' like levels of consciousness. I don't know if you're
Uh-huh.
familiar with this, but shame being the absolute lowest level for a human being, and actually anger being quite can be quite useful, because anger is way better than shame, because at least you're getting ready to take action, or at least anger can move you into some sort of action, whereas guilt, shame, depression are just going to keep you kind of like hunkered back. But then
Uh-huh.
anger, in my understanding also, is like, showing that you can do violence, getting ready to be physical, that sort of thing. So do you deal in all the emotions when you say emotional regulation? Like, how does anger fall in? Is there helpful anger?
Yes. And that's exactly where, when we're talking about emotion management and even anger in and of itself, it's a primary emotion that's also a secondary emotion. So it's the only one that is considered to be secondary. And because it's secondary, it's fueled by all of the other ones. right? And so when we're trying to do this emotional regulation, nervous system regulation work, we're really just trying to understand what messages our emotions are telling us. What are they trying to get to? And because anger is so distressing, that's why we tend to kind of just lock it away and shove it down, because I can know that I'm angry, but the only way that I've been taught how to express it is through violence or aggression. And so what I really try to do is separate those from the emotion, which is energy in motion, and then the how that energy expresses itself, which is the aggression. Right? It's like excitement is the emotion, and then jumping up and down and like squealing is the behavior. So if we can separate the emotion from the behavior, then we can use that emotion to tell us that something is going wrong. It's a siren, it's a red flag. It's saying, hey, you may not have noticed this. But because we're more kind of primal beings and before our frontal lobe is fully developed, we tend to just lead with the quickest solution and just getting it done and over with, which is where the aggression comes from. And it really is a very challenging thing to feel all of this energy in our body and not do something physical with it. And I'm not I'm not even going to suggest that we not. It's more so when you're feeling this, here's what we can do instead.
Instead
Right? We
of
want to, instead of acting out with violence or aggression. Right? So we still have all of this energy. It's because anger puts us into fight or flight. I'm ready to fight for my life. And so when it's that and versus my partner or my child rolling their eyes at me, my brain can't tell the difference. It's a threat. And so that's why we kind of just get up in arms. We act in ways that we regret. It's called the amygdala hijack. So that part of our brain, the reptilian part that triggers, it pulls all the blood supply from our frontal lobe, from our rational thinking brain. And so it's not an unwillingness to be calm and work through it and kind of have the senses come back. It's an incapability. So what do I do in between? How do I reduce the intensity of the siren and also bring my frontal lobe back online quicker? And so healthy anger, I do believe at its core is an incredibly healthy emotion. It's a helpful call to action. And it's really telling me where I don't feel comfortable, where I feel violated, where something isn't right. And then it's our job to figure out what it's trying to tell us. And because it's so primal, so primitive, sometimes it just misses the mark. It's going to get it wrong. And it's our work to do to figure out what that is. But parenting is just all raw emotion, and we don't know what to do with it. And then our childhood experiences come through in watching our children. We are resentful, we're envious, we're rageful because I'm now recognizing this injustice from my childhood.
mm,
And it
mm.
becomes this whole big swirling kind of chaos. But if we can separate the anger and really dig in deep and accept multiple truths and allow for them to be true fully without the but, then we have a very powerful tool that we just need to learn how to utilize well.
Do you feel that the anger eventually does have to find its way into some sort of expression, outward expression, or is, because just because you're feeling something doesn't mean it has to become a compulsion, right? So something, anxiety comes up. It doesn't mean you have to go on WebMD and check your symptoms.
Uh-huh.
You can just sit with that anxiety. Do you feel that there can be that distinction with anger in particular, where you can let it live in you, or does it build if you don't find an expression? Because Michael Singer, do you know Michael Singer, Untethered Soul?
Mm-mm.
Great book, Untethered Soul. He did a lot of work in prisons and working with like essentially the high level like murderers,
Mhm.
mostly violent criminals, and they all basically would say the same thing. One day I just snapped.
Yeah.
I just snapped and
Yeah.
murdered somebody, and that's why they're there. And it wasn't like I planned. They just freaking lost it. And next thing they knew, they strangled someone to death or stabbed someone or shot someone. And that hijack you were talking about a moment ago. So I guess what's swirling around in my head right now is that, do we have to decompress physically from that anger? Or is it like other things that, like, as an actor, like, I like to say there's emotions, and then emotions or feelings don't have to turn into moods. It's when we start to hold on to a feeling that it turns into a mood. And I watch it happen. Like, in an acting scene, you could be sobbing your eyes out and then laughing a second later, just like a baby, when you're not trying to control or hold on to things. But it's like when I feel upset, and then I hold on to that, and I hold on to that. And this very passing kind of upset feeling turns into 3 days of a mood. So is anger something that you feel that you can let pass through you, or do you have to, like, do a release valve every so often?
Yeah.
Or does it turn into this guy winds up, a normal human being is like, well, that's it. Like, one day I just lost it, and, I like
Yeah.
completely lost control.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it depends also versus with nature versus nurture as well, right? So anger is a very motion inducing, right? Emotion. And so when that comes through, there's going to be that part that because it's triggering our survival, our body will fill with adrenaline, and we're really just getting ready. We're getting amped. And so unless I know kind of what to do with that, I'm going to shove it down or I'm going to release it. But then even when and here's where I think the distinction really lies is that even when people do release it, they don't feel any better,
Right. Why is that?
right?
Why do you think that is?
I think it's because they're just trying to release the emotion. And in that moment, they feel powerful. They feel like they're doing something about it. But oftentimes, the way that they do it becomes its own problem. So here's an example. So if my husband came to me or I voiced a complaint and then he was like, well, I don't like when you do that either. And what about? Right. And then he kind of loses it, right? And he gets really upset and whatever that is. And then the way that he expresses it becomes the problem. Now I wasn't heard and he wasn't heard. And now this man has to apologize. Now this man has to like sit in the ick of it. And if he apologizes, and if I don't believe in multiple truths, I'm going to assume that he's apologizing for all of it, including my original upset. So if he tries to come back and say, hey, how I handled that earlier was gross, and can we talk about what really sparked me?
Mm.
I might say, well, okay, so what? You're not sorry? You just said that to placate me, and now we're just going to start this whole thing all over again, and you didn't mean what you said, and now you're full of shit, and la da 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 da, and it becomes this whole big thing. And that's pretty much what happened constantly with my husband. But that's kind of what it is it feels good in the moment, but the way that we express it is maladaptive. So then I then have this hole to patch up, and that's gross, and I feel guilt and I feel shame and I feel unworthy and devalued. And then I regret the way that I made you feel. Or the fear that I instilled in you, or the discomfort. And now we both know that what I did with that wasn't cute. And now I don't really know what to do with this guilt and shame, right? And so there are ways that once we become more aware of ourselves and we really do get better at listening to what the trigger is, that like little pang that you get in your chest and you decide to quote unquote let it go, because that's just apparently the only advice we have is like take deep breaths, let it go. And if we don't
Take
know
deep
what
breaths
to
and
do,
don't exhale. No one there to remind, and exhale also, everyone. Yeah, it's like, sorry, I hate
yeah.
that. Just take a few deep breaths. Well, and also exhale.
And also consider why you're doing it and what it's supposed to achieve, right? There's so much of that again, we don't know what it is. We don't understand it. And so we're just throwing very like typical advice that's not advice at people. And so as we do more of the work, as we understand more of what our triggers are, I can get faster at catching the pang, which then means that I can allow for me to say, oof, that did not feel good in my chest. Like something's going on here. What was that? And then, okay, well, they said this and then I felt that pang. What could that mean? Right. And really dissecting it and leading with curiosity about ourselves. That's when I notice we don't really need a lot of the energy to be released. But if I don't know what that is, yeah, I refer to it like a volcano, right? Like we're just kind of shoving it down, shoving it down. It's getting more compact. It's energy and motion, so it has nowhere to go. So it's going to cause heart disease and inflammation and all of these types of things that work so far against us. And then ultimately, yeah, it's going to be that one thing and it volcanoes out. And what we're learning is that within 2.5 hours after an angry outburst, we are 8 times more likely to suffer a cardiac event. And so
Wow.
we're talking 2.5 hours after it. that even after I've quote unquote calmed down, if you haven't actually gotten to a point of regulation, you've more so just decided to move on from it without addressing it, you're still at risk 2.5 hours later for a heart
Mm,
attack. And so there is some of that, but we have really beautiful newer ways of understanding. Like the antiquated advice is to punch a pillow because it's better than punching a person,
right.
right? Or go to a smash room. But neurons that fire together wire together. And
Yeah.
so if you're training your body that when you're angry, that aggression is still what you do with it, you'll eventually graduate to human victims, to causing a bigger scene, causing more damage. So what we want to do are things that still release the energy, but aren't in like a physical aggressive motion.
Right.
So some of them, I mean, humming is really great. It stimulates the vagus nerve. You can go inside of a doorway. Do not do this on drywall. I beg of you, you will go right through it. But in a doorway, if you kind of starfish your body
Yeah.
and you push up against it while taking deep breaths, if you can do that while like grunting or humming, it's a really good way of getting rid of that emotion. And I know that it feels gross and it seems silly and you'll feel stupid while you're doing it. Don't get me wrong. You'll feel less stupid than punching a wall in front of people
Right.
or harming someone and not being able to come back from that.
So we've got a few minutes left, and
Mhm.
I have a little questionnaire I do at the end of every episode. But before I hop onto that, I just wanted to ask you for anger, because it is a secondary emotion. In your experience, what do you feel is the most common thing underneath that anger?
Injustice.
Perceived injustice
Mhm.
of some, yeah,
Just
the
to
perception
any
of
degree. Yeah.
yeah, the perception of injustice.
Yeah, I think injustice is the way that kind of all of the things can come through. Even when I'm feeling devalued, there's an injustice there because I feel like I should be valued, right? With my kids, there's an injustice because I don't want them to talk back to me. There's an injustice that they're getting a childhood that I didn't get. I'm envious of their ability to move through life seemingly carefree with so much less of an emotional burden than some of us were raised with. And that feels like an injustice. And it's purely what they represent. But if I don't know how to detangle that, if I don't know how to say my parents did their best and this is where I didn't benefit, then of course those things will kind of manifest. But injustice above all is what I tend to see.
And that injustice comes as a result of us deciding what should or shouldn't be.
Exactly. Expectation management
Yeah, and we
is a
have
big one.
expect how the world should behave, or this person or this organization. When they don't, we feel injustice has occurred, and as a result, we get angry. Yes, it's someone once said, "Emotion is the result of the violation of expectations,"
Yes.
and it sounds okay. Interesting.
And
Yeah.
confusing facts with feelings too is a really big part of that.
Well, you saw, was reading the other day. You have to be careful that perceived harm does not mean actual harm.
Mhm.
And to kind of bring this all together, like one of the common themes that I'm just picking out right now from this conversation is communication. And the more you talk honestly, with a sense of curiosity and vulnerability, the better things tend to go just in general for everyone, because you saying, look, this is how I really feel about my kids. This is my experience, opens the door to other people to go, yep, I've been feeling this a long time. Oh, thank
Mhm.
God someone said it because I've been feeling it, kind of thing. I just feel like nowadays, especially, and, tying it to acting, I started acting a long time ago because I wanted people to like me. And I don't act for that reason anymore. And I've gone away from that into I want people to not feel alone. And maybe they see something that I do and they see themselves in that character, and they
Mm.
realize that weird thing they thought or did is really not so weird at all. Because I do believe that the more personal, the more universal. Carl Rogers said the more
Powerful.
personal, the more general. And I do agree with that. So it's really cool to connect with somebody who is out there sharing very personal, personal feelings and thoughts around parenting that don't seem to get shared, uh, you know, in mass, if you will.
Yeah,
So
and I think that there's kind of that part that if we don't acknowledge it, then we assume it'll go away. And if it's not a big problem, then it'll kind of just go away. And a little over 4 years ago, my husband got sober. And during that time, I had an opportunity to also look at my drinking. and see how problematic it was, that just because it wasn't to his degree didn't also mean that I was using it poorly, and it was a coping mechanism as opposed to something that actually brought me joy. And so now it's very rare that I drink, but around that time it was an identity crisis, right? Like there's so many of these things that we assume that we need to hit rock bottom in order to move through. And I'm a big advocate for just being witness to someone else's and allowing for that to be enough.
Right. And I think I was saying the other day, it's going to be 10 years for me in September.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But the thing is,
Amazing.
there just aren't that many resources for people that are non-alcoholics. And it's like I'm working with somebody right not working with him, but a friend right now. He's not an alcoholic. He's in his 40s. He has a daughter. Like he works hard all week. He's a financial planner, and Friday he has a few drinks or whatever. And like he had a bachelor party with some friends, and of course, in your 40s, you go drinking all
Yeah,
weekend.
it's
You
different.
feel it for 3. Yeah, but it's like there's just very few resources for people that are in that place of like, look, no, I didn't sell my house and I'm eating out of a dumpster. It's like AA is great for people who are real addicts, but for the rest of us that are not really quote alcoholics, there just aren't that many resources out there. So, I it's totally take that note on like, yeah, I drink, I enjoy it. Maybe is it helpful? Is it not? It's like this has to be, it has to be this big extreme thing and then it's hard it can be harder to change behavior that is not a real rock bottom problem sort of thing, right?
Hmm.
It's like, you didn't really hit rock bottom because when I stopped drinking, my life was great. Other than, being a lot heavier from drinking so much,
Sure.
like there was nothing wrong. I'm living a good life. Like I was well
Hmm.
employed. Like I have a wonderful partner. I was doing what I enjoyed. So there wasn't really me going, oh shit, man, this is my 6th DUI arrest. I'm going to go to jail, next time if
I
I
had no
don't.
choice,
I have no
seeming.
choice. I had
Hmm.
plenty of choice. So yeah, no, it's an interesting point not to keep thinking on this middle area for folks where they're not really addicts, but they do want to make a change.
Yeah,
And
and I think that there's a difference between that. I don't view my husband as a more traditional alcoholic. I view him as somebody who survived a lot of trauma and wasn't equipped
right,
to cope with it, right?
that's
And
why I
that's where I
drink.
think a lot of us end up
Right.
within, right?
Right. I was drinking to self-medicate unconsciously for most of my life. I didn't have the
Hmm.
tools to do. I'm a highly sensitive person by genetics.
Yeah,
So I was never, no one told me that. Like I didn't know, I didn't thought something wrong with me. And then I had my first drink at 15. I'm like, oh, I feel good. Like I didn't need to
problem
think, problem
solved.
solved.
Yeah.
Like problem solved, cut to 39 years old, still drinking because
Hmm.
because I don't have the tools and I don't understand how to cope with all that I'm feeling because it's a lot and a lot more than the average, person, like a lot more than 99% of the people if you want to look at my genetics. So it's like it's hard to
Yeah.
do it. So AA didn't work for me that way because I'm not an alcoholic. And like you could put wine under my face right now, like it doesn't bother me at all. Like that's why I'd always kind of tilt my head. They're like, yeah, I'm 30 years sober and I'm just really lucky I didn't drink today. And I always think, and like I don't want to take away from that person, but at the same
Yeah.
time, like, what are you talking about, man? Like if you can do it for 30 years, you're good. Like I'm not saying that you should like let down your defenses, but like obviously you can do this. But it sounds like you can continually have a beginner's mindset. And for me, and the way that I looked at it was like, I don't want to go backwards. This has been like a year. If I start
Hmm.
over, I got to start over. I'm not starting from scratch, so it's just not worth it. But I understand like the addicts don't think that way. So
Yeah, I mean, it's neurochemically they're wired very differently, even structurally is wired differently. And then I think what I'm hearing from you is that you've developed a distress tolerance. And for a lot of us, we just don't have one.
I have had no choice but to develop a very, very, very high distress tolerance because I would live distressed all the time. And I would never get anything done if I let the distress. I remember when I got out of the service, I was having panic attacks. I didn't even know what was going on with me. Like I would
Right.
hyperventilate basically 6 times a day and like
Mm.
just go like literally think I was going to die. But I was smart enough at the time and I was going to undergrad. I wanted to stay home, but I knew if I stayed home one time and one time only, I would likely never leave the house again. So I
Mm.
kept pushing myself to go out.
Good for
And then I
you.
decided to be an actor and then up the anxiety even further to do,
Sure.
it's so yeah, it's like my tolerance for distress, fortunately, unfortunately, is very, very, very high. because I've had no choice. Otherwise, I just wouldn't be able to function in the world, because most of the time I would just get overwhelmed by what I'm feeling and either self-medicate or, never leave the house, sort of thing. So it's
Yeah.
good. It's good in many respects, but um, and I like to say, I steal from Chad Foster, great speaker. He says, I'm not who I am today in spite of what's happened to me. He went blind in his 20s. He said, I'm who I am today because of what happened to me. And I really love that distinction. Well, I want to shift gears into the final little part of this. So
Yeah.
do you know Inside the Actors Studio, or did you know the show Inside the Actors Studio? It's
I do. Yeah.
one of my favorite shows. And I got to do some speaking and get to know uh, the actors or Pace, the actors studio at Pace University in New York. And I got to meet James Lipton a couple times, and it
Very
was
cool.
one of my favorite shows. For many, I love actors. One, two, there's the questionnaire he asks at the end of the show. And it's really cool to hear different answers to the same questions and then overlapping themes between everyone. So James is no longer with us, and this is my podcast, and I can do whatever I want. So I
Yeah.
have adopted the Inside the Actor Studio questionnaire, and it's just a series of questions, and whatever first comes to mind unedited, I would love to hear your answers. Can I ask you these questions?
Of course. Go for it.
Davina, what is your favorite word?
Fortitude.
What is your least favorite word? What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Vulnerability.
What turns you off?
Facade.
What's your favorite curse word? What sound or noise do you love?
Ooh. Ooh. I don't know that I have a favorite.
Or that
I
you
don't
love?
know.
It doesn't have to be a
Yeah, I'm
favorite.
trying to think of like noises I like. Pencil on paper.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Chewing.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Singer.
What profession would you never like to do?
Bookkeeper.
Same. Last question.
Mm-hmm.
If heaven exists and you believe in such a thing, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Welcome back.
Davina, thank you so much. Where can folks connect with you?
I am everywhere as a steady space. So it's a place to come in, find your balance, and go back out into the world. So that's my handle, it's my website, everything.
A steady space, all one word.
Mm-hmm.
And Hehn is how we say your last name.
Yes.
Davina Hehn, everyone. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate you.